So I came across this CNN article, Let Us Now Praise Single Moms by David G. Allen. And in this article, this author basically says that it is not so bad to be raised by a single mom, or that fatherlessness has basically no negative effects and all of that nonsense, right? So this is basically another attack against fathers, right? And they're trying to minimize the negative effects of fatherlessness. So yeah, I want to push back against this notion, right? And as someone who also experienced fatherlessness his whole life, I can definitely say from my personal experience that this is complete bullshit, right? There are many negative effects of father absence in one's life, right? So yeah, but I don't want to read this whole article, right? I just want to read the section where he cites research, right? So he says even in this that the kids are all right, right? In fatherless households, the kids are all right, supposedly. And he says a 2017 study, however, looked at the long-term effects of single parenthood on kids and found that it had nearly no impact on the general life satisfaction. So he cites this study here, Growing Up with a Single Mother and Life Satisfaction in Adulthood, a test of mitigating and moderating factors. And it says in the abstract, individuals who grew up with a single mother for their entire childhood, and to a lesser degree also individuals who experienced parental separation, showed a small but persistent decrease in life satisfaction into old age, controlling childhood socioeconomic status. This decrease was partly mediated by worse adulthood living conditions related to socioeconomic and educational success, physical health, social integration, and romantic relationship outcomes. So basically, this study shows the exact opposite of what he said that this study shows, right? That there is a consistent, persistent decrease in life satisfaction in individuals who lived only with a single mom, right? And it even correlates with worse outcomes in adulthood related to socioeconomic and educational status, physical health, social integration, and romantic relationship outcomes, right? So this is an absolute lie. That the study that he himself cited shows the exact opposite of what he's saying, right? And then he cites another study, separate 10-year study on single parenthood that collected data from 30,000 households in the UK, came to a similar conclusion last year, right? So he cites this study here, Family Portrait, Single Parent Families and Transitions Over Time, right? And yes, it does conclude that supposedly there's no evidence of a negative impact of living in a single-parent household on children's well-being with regard to self-reported life satisfaction, quality of peer relationships, or positivity about family lives. Now, the emphasis should be here on self-reported, right? So they're handing out questionnaires to people, right, that supposedly assess the life outcomes, but this is a very bad gauge on life outcomes, actually, right? You can have very biased questionnaires, right? So I don't think it is a good gauge to rely on self-reported data, but we should actually look at concrete objective life outcomes such as socioeconomic status, crime rates, health outcomes, etc. I think this is a better gauge, right? But it also says here that family extends beyond the single parenthood parent household unit. In particular, grandparents play a key role in providing both financial and practical support, right? And this study showed that single-parent households were more likely to be supported by grandparents, right, in terms of, for example, financial health, house repairs, paying bills, looking after children, cooking meals, shopping, and so on and so forth, right? Which makes sense because typically single moms have better relationship to grandparents, right? And they receive more help, right? Like women in general receive more help in our society, right? But this is also true in a family context. So they receive more help with their parenting in the single mother household, right? So this could potentially offset the negative effects of single mother households if the grandparents step in, so to speak, right? So this is actually confounded data, what we are seeing here, right? And we shouldn't rely on it, right? Especially if it's self-reported data, but it's further skewed by this effect of grandparents' extra help, right, in these single-parent households, right? So the second study that he cited is also pretty misleading, right? So here's now the actual data that I can show you, right? So here's a study from 2017. Does living in a fatherless household compromise educational success? Right? Educational success and also cognitive and non-cognitive skills, right? Those are very concrete, non-subjective factors, right? And this is also a cross-country comparison study, right? It says right here, by mapping inequalities by family forms across 33 developed countries, this study provides robust cross-country comparable evidence on the relationship of household structure with both cognitive and non-cognitive skills. The study produces three key results. First, the absence of fathers from the household as well as co-residence with grandparents is associated with adverse outcomes for children in virtually all developed countries. Second, this is generally true in terms of both cognitive and non-cognitive skills, although the disadvantage connected to both family forms is notably stronger in the former than in the latter domain. So father absence is correlated with adverse outcomes for children in all these countries, right? Or virtually all these countries that are studied here. And it's especially strong for cognitive skills, right? So we can see that it has a detrimental effect on educational success, actually, right? If you have no father, or correlates with that at least, right? Here's also from Psychology Today. Father absence, father deficit, father hunger, right? And this data comes from a 2007 UNICEF report, right? And here are some of the correlates and outcomes that correlate with father absence, right? So diminished self-concept and compromised physical and emotional security. Children consistently report feeling abandoned when their fathers are not involved in their lives, struggling with their emotions and episodic bouts of self-loathing. Behavioral problems. Fatherless children have more difficulties with social adjustment and are more likely to report problems with friendships and manifest behavioral problems. Many develop a swaggering, intimidating persona in an attempt to disguise their underlying fears, resentments, anxieties, and unhappiness. Truancy and poor academic performance. 71% of high school dropouts are fatherless. Fatherless children have more trouble academically, scoring poorly on tests of reading, mathematics, and thinking skills. Children from father-absent homes are more likely to play truant from school, more likely to be excluded from school, more likely to leave school at age 16, and less likely to attain academic and professional qualifications in adulthood. Delinquency and youth crime, including violent crime, 85% of youth in prison have an absent father. Fatherless children are more likely to offend and go to jail as adults. Promiscuity and teen pregnancy. Fatherless children are more likely to experience problems with sexual health, including a greater likelihood of having intercourse before the age of 16. Foregoing contraception during first intercourse, becoming teenage parents, and contracting sexually transmitted infection. Drug and alcohol abuse. Fatherless children are more likely to smoke, drink alcohol, and abuse drugs in childhood and adulthood. Homelessness. 90% of runaway children have an absent father. Exploitation and abuse. Fatherless children are at a greater risk of suffering physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, being 5 times more likely to have experienced physical abuse and emotional maltreatment, with a 100 times higher risk of fatal abuse. A recent study reported that preschoolers not living with both their biological parents are 40 times more likely to be sexually abused. Physical health problems. Fatherless children report significantly more psychosomatic health symptoms and illness, such as acute and chronic pain, asthma, headaches, mental health disorders. Father-absent children are consistently overrepresented in a wide range of mental health problems, particularly anxiety, depression, and suicide. Life chances. As adults, fatherless children are more likely to experience unemployment, have low incomes, remain on social assistance, and experience homelessness. Future relationships. Father-absent children tend to enter partnerships earlier, are more likely to divorce or dissolve their cohabiting unions, and are more likely to have children outside marriage or outside any partnership. Mortality. Fatherless children are more likely to die as children and live an average of 4 years less over the lifespan. Right, so this data clearly indicates that you see across the board worse outcomes for fatherless children. Even the Feminist Guardian admits that single-parent families double the likelihood of child mental illness, right? Children from single-parent families are twice as likely to suffer from mental health problems as those living with married parents, right? Boys whose parents had split up had the highest rate of childhood mental illness in 2004, the Office for National Statistics said. Right, and it's also another study, Growing Up Without Father, the Effects on African American Boys. It says right here, boys without fathers in the home have noticeably higher rate of incidence of drug abuse, school dropout, crime, and delinquency, and teen pregnancy. Right? Here's also these statistics on fathers.com. Right? Poverty goes up. Right? You can see clearly in this graph. Right? Female-headed households have higher poverty rates. Right? And when there's married couples, right, with both parents, comparatively very low poverty rates, right? Child poverty rates, right? And all kinds of other negative effects, right? Here's also a study that compares single mother and single father family structures, right, on with an effect on youth crime, right? And it also controls for like poverty and all of economic factors, right? Let me read you this. The study examined the effects of the concentrations of single mother families and single father families on youth crime. 5 hypotheses, including the maternal same-sex equality, prevalence, and economic disadvantage hypotheses, were formulated at the aggregate level and tested using data from 433 Canadian municipalities. Consistent with the prevalence hypothesis, it was found that the concentration of single mother families had a much stronger conducive effect on youth crime than did single father families. Also, at high prevalence level, the effect of single mother families was much stronger than its effect at low prevalence level. However, the significant but relatively weak effects of low income in single mother families and single father families on youth crime offered only limited support to the economic disadvantage hypothesis. Right, so this basically says that there's a stronger effect of single motherhood on youth crime than single fatherhood on youth crime, right? So basically there's a higher likelihood of youth crime with single mother families, right? And they also said that the effects of low income in single mother or single fatherhoods families has like a limited explanatory power, right? So this cannot be explained due to in single mother households there's like lower income or some other excuse like that, right? So, and usually these mothers get child support and all the kinds of economic support, right? But even if they didn't, this cannot be explained. This cannot explain, low income cannot explain that there is a higher likelihood of youth crime among single mother households, right? So, yeah, you can see that from this study that single fathers are actually praiseworthy compared to single mothers, right? But it's of course better if both parents are in the house, right, raising children. And I also want to quickly mention here that single fatherhood is not caused by deadbeat dads or something like that, right? But as this article points out, in the largest federally funded study ever conducted on the subject, psychologist Sanford Braver demonstrated that very few married fathers abandon their children. Overwhelmingly, it is mothers, not fathers, who are walking away from marriages and thus separating children from their fathers. Other studies have reached similar or more dramatic conclusions. Right, so, and this has also something to do with child support laws, right, which incentivize mothers to divorce, right, and rip the children away from the fathers, right? So, yeah, this CNN article is total bullshit. Okay, there's more enough empirical evidence that single motherhood, fatherlessness is bad for children, right? It's as simple as that. It's bad across the board, right? When we look at health outcomes, when we look at educational outcomes, life satisfaction, lifespan, right? It reduces the lifespan. It's bad, right? Across the board when we look at all kinds of factors, right? So yeah, this CNN article is a propaganda article, and it's really laughable that even one of his own studies that he cited shows that fatherlessness is negative, right? Even one of his own studies showed that, right? So yeah, thanks for watching.